No, I know. I mean, I cut myself shaving yesterday. No, I can't, I can't afford to go to a barber like every couple of days. What? An electric razor. What do you do? You plug it into the wall and it buzzes your face. Yeah. So it either kills me or it saves me a little bit of time. Well, oh, no, wait. What's the next thing gonna be? Like, self-buttering toast. No. I got a good one. Okay. Electric hair curlers. Huh? They already have them. Since when? Last year. Okay, well, yeah, live and learn, yeah. All right, talk to you soon. Yep.
Headline of the month. Hindenburg decrees. Order at any price. Weimar's civil liberties take a hit.
I'm Indy Neidell.
I'm Spartacus Olsson.
And this is The Rise of Hitler. Welcome back to the Weimar Wire, covering all of March's malicious muddles, maddening mania, and mind-boggling mayhem.
No cursing this month? Did somebody have a visit by the Sittenpolizei, maybe?
I don't want to talk about that.
Okay. And here are this month's other noteworthy headlines. Customs chaos. Germany and Austria push a bold customs union plan meeting tough resistance from France.
And a Thuringian tango. Say that again. A Thuringian tango. A political meltdown as an associate bails on the Nazi alliance. But before we get to all the March madness, let's have a brief look back at February 1931.
We witnessed a frenzy in the Reichstag. Nazis and communists staged a dramatic walkout, inadvertently clearing the path for new parliamentary rules to pass with zero opposition. Meanwhile, Joseph Goebbels' newspaper Der Angriff got slapped with a ban for stoking anti-Jewish hatred.
Ernst Röhm tightened his grip on the SA, the Nazi Party paramilitary organization, turning it into more of a military machine than ever. And with unemployment still spiraling and the economy in tatters, the chaos in Germany only grew worse in February.
Now, speaking of the Nazis and the SA, where's Hitler? What's Adolf up to this month?
He asked. You shall receive. So this month, Hitler addresses the reappearance of Röhm and changes Röhm made to the SA since then. On March the 7th, at an SA rally in Munich, he says,
"It's impossible to dissolve the SA because it isn't just an organization. It's a core essence that in large part comes from me. I am the SA and you belong to it. You are the SA and I belong to you. If I were ever forced to give up the SA, I would do so with a bleeding heart, if that were the only way to save the movement."
Wait, so I am the SA and you are me and I am you and you are the SA and I am you and a bleeding heart. Wait, carry the one.
Yeah, something like that.
All right, okay.
Vintage Hitler.
Vintage, yeah, I've never heard anyone say vintage Hitler before. Beyond that, Hitler also again announces his and the Nazi Party's oath to legality.
We will stick to the Constitution, and by doing so, we will achieve our goal.
But he does not leave it at that. He also qualifies the statement a bit.
I'm also accused of being too cowardly to fight illegally. I'm definitely not too cowardly for that. I'm just too cowardly to lead the SA straight into machine gun fire. We need the SA for far more important tasks, namely building the Third Reich.
Wow.
So he's adopting the legal route not out of respect for the Constitution, but because he fears the repercussions.
Yeah, and there is more. This, though, is only alleged by reputable sources that we here have at the Weimar Wire. He supposedly finishes his talk in Munich with,
"Comrades, raise your right fist and swear this oath to me. By our fists, the new Germany shall rise." Well, that sounds very much in line with his oath to legality. Is there anything else besides that?
Yes, he is also up to the usual.
Denouncing traitors of 1918, blaming Marxists for stoking class conflict, promising to build the new Reich, calling on students and workers alike to unify under his banner for Germany's rebirth.
Boom again.
Vilifying the Weimar parties as useless placeholders.
Exactly. Same old Hitler, just with a fresh and festive March spin. There is one thing. He also issues a statement regarding our headline of the month. Hindenburg's new presidential decree. Hitler says,
This emergency decree confirms that our commitment to legality and law can only carry our movement to victory. While Hitler may see it as a victory for his methods, everyone else wonders if it's a victory for democracy. Now, let's pull back the curtain on this decree.
over the past 14 months, we've seen how political murders, mass agitation, and public slander have become everyday occurrences here in Weimar Germany.
The far-right Nazis and far-left communists, backed by their paramilitary SA, SS, and Red Front, have paralyzed the country.
This is why, in March last year, 1930, almost to the day actually, Minister of the Interior Karl Severing introduced the revised Reich Protection Law, empowering the government to fight its enemies more forcefully.
He believed that this would contain extremist violence by targeting publications like the Rote Fahne or the Völkische Beobachter and banning uniforms that symbolize paramilitary aggression. Over the following months, officials cited the law multiple times to suppress incitement or slander, like when banning an issue of Joseph Goebbels, Nazi Party MP and propagandist, Der Angriff, just last month.
But as we have seen, it has not worked, at least not well enough. This is why, now on the 28th, President Hindenburg uses his extensive powers for yet another emergency decree.
This one is titled Decree of the Reichspräsident for Combating Political Disturbances, and it is truly something. Here it is, as Vorwärts, the Social Democratic Party newspaper, describes it.
No doubt that the new decree of the Reichspräsident is a sharp and dangerous weapon. Everything will depend on how it is applied. Well, what makes it a sharp and dangerous weapon? At first glance, it isn't as striking as you might expect. Smarty, remind me and them exactly what it does again.
Sure thing. Broadly put, it forces all political events, meetings, marches, and Lastwagenfahrten, truck rides by political groups, to be announced to the local police 24 hours in advance or face shutdown. The police may ban or disperse them if they deviate from what was announced, promote violence, or threaten public order, and can seize any posters likely to incite unrest. They can even outlaw entire organizations if members commit repeated acts of violence. As you said, nothing too exciting, but here comes the kicker as put by the communists.
Attack on the freedom of the people, a fascist dictatorship decree. The government has, in practice, declared a state of siege across all of Germany. All so-called constitutional basic rights are suspended. The articles on personal liberty, the inviolability of the home, the inviolability of postal and other secrecy, the right to free expression, the freedoms of assembly and association, and the protection of private property. Okay, I noticed two things here. One, I never thought I'd hear the hippity-hoppity let's abolish private property crowd. I like that. Lament the loss of constitutional property rights. Two, more importantly, they are 100% correct in their description. There is no Marxist hyperbole this time.
By the Constitution, the president has the power to suspend all of these fundamental rights in light of a grave threat. In this decree, Hindenburg explicitly states,
The fundamental rights named in Article 48 of the Reich Constitution are suspended for the duration of this decree to the extent necessary for its enforcement.
This could have some potentially disastrous consequences, as the Allgemeine Deutsche Zeitung outlines. Among the populace, the core idea of the new emergency decree to rein in these apostles of hate and thereby limit the chance of political murder will likely be welcome. Another question, however, is whether certain provisions are so broadly worded that in the hands of some of the authorities we have today, they could become a weapon of oppression.
Actually, there is one that they will not suspend. The Ministry of the Interior has said no interference with the confidentiality of correspondence, telegrams, and telephone calls is intended.
That's wonderful news.
Yeah!
That's great news. I'm sure it'll be a huge comfort to know that when they arrest us for talking too loudly or ransack our apartments in name of public order, my mail will be safe.
Yay!
Yay!
You are certainly not the only one with reservations, though. The Nazis have this to say.
What the government, in unison with Hindenburg, has done with this new emergency decree surpasses anything we've seen so far when it comes to politically disenfranchising the German people. The National Socialist movement will protest this brazen muzzling of Germans' freedom of expression strictly within the law.
Strictly within the law. Someone is making damn sure that everyone knows they are following the rules. Anyway, the Vossische Zeitung sums the whole situation up quite nicely.
Official sources do not hide that the emergency decrees partly entailed significant encroachments on various rights and freedoms. However, after the countless murders, assaults, and riots of recent months, these measures seem necessary.
It really is a double-edged sword, but nobody knows yet who it will cut, the wielder or his enemy. One thing we do know already, though, is that the Nazi Reichstag walkout from last month backfires yet again.
2 days before the emergency decree is announced by Chancellor Brüning and President Hindenburg, the Reichstag adjourns itself until the 13th of October.
This pretty clearly shows that neither Brüning nor Hindenburg is planning to run the country parliamentarily. Emergency decrees are their tool of choice. It also means that the Reichstag cannot overturn the emergency decrees since it's not in session.
And the way to get it back into session is by a simple majority vote.
Simple.
That's it.
That's it.
Something possible if the Nazis, the second largest party, hadn't decided to give up all parliamentary positions and indefinitely boycott the Reichstag last month. In their bid to sabotage Brüning's government, they've instead handed him the keys to the castle.
And the news also brings reactions from Germany's neighbor, France. There, newspapers speculate that this could be an orchestrated regime change steering Germany on the path towards dictatorship.
But that's not the only reason French newspapers are buzzing about Germany right now. Other developments in Berlin are causing a stir across the Rhine.
On March the 19th, Germany and Austria, quietly, strike an agreement in principle to form a shared customs zone. On the 21st, they go public, and by the 22nd, reactions from abroad begin pouring in.
A customs union might sound harmless enough. Both sides drop tariffs at their mutual border, hoping to boost trade and fight off economic ruin. Right now in Germany, nearly 5 million people are out of work, half of them receiving no government assistance and relying solely on charity to survive.
Austria faces equally dire conditions. From a purely economic standpoint, then, this pact seems perfectly logical in the midst of such desperation.
It does. However, the communist paper Arbeiterstimme insists it goes beyond that.
The significance of this agreement goes far beyond the framework of economic arrangements. It is of great political importance. Through the path of a customs union, the German and Austrian bourgeoisie are moving towards the realization of Anschluss.
Anschluss is the unification of Germany and Austria, which the Entente powers explicitly forbade after the Great War. But why does France see it as that rather than an economic quid pro quo?
Rather than explain it myself, I will let French Foreign Minister Aristide do the talking.
A few years ago, we were confronted with a political Anschluss venture, not a customs project. That was a serious danger. At the time, I declared, if you go that far, it means war. Then agreements were reached. The four guarantors demanded a commitment that Austria must not, neither directly nor indirectly, relinquish any part of its independence. This customs union is not right. It is unsettling. It contradicts what was agreed upon, and it contradicts the conditions for a European collaboration. Also, a union between Austria and Germany is explicitly prohibited by both the Treaty of Versailles and the Treaty of Saint-Germain, the treaties Germany and Austria signed after the war. But the National Socialists make it clear that Anschluss is precisely what they want.
We National Socialists welcome this new arrangement. We can hope that the political unification will soon follow, just as the German customs union once paved the way for the unification of Lesser Germany.
This is referring to the 1800s and the Zollverein, a Prussian-led customs union. From when the German national movement began at the beginning of the 1800s, the dream of a Großdeutsche Lösung, Greater Germany, has been around.
The problem was that both Prussia and Austria-Hungary wanted to be in charge of any eventual pan-German state, with Prussia emerging victorious from the 7 Weeks' War in 1866.
This victory and that customs union then fueled the Kleindeutsche Lösung, Lesser Germany, where Prussia united various German states but excluded Austria's huge multi-ethnic empire. But now that the Habsburg monarchy is no more, the Nazis see a renewed chance to realize this Greater Germany vision.
And Briand is undoubtedly right about one thing. Just after the war ended, Austria briefly declared it wanted to join Germany, but the victors said no. Then in 1922, Austria's rescue loan under the Geneva Protocol came alongside a broad pledge to not undermine its own sovereignty, exactly what Briand now accuses the customs union of violating.
As for Britain, Vorwärts reports that London examines the legality but refuses to let any single bloc dictate its will to others, leaving the final verdict to the League of Nations.
Ironically, Briand just last year championed a vision of pan-European unity with his Europe Memorandum. Remember that? Yeah? I guess just not if that unity comes from Berlin or Vienna. Okay, for now, whether the union will be accepted by the League of Nations or tolerated by France is anyone's guess.
Something that isn't anyone's guess is that as of March 13, the Nazi coalition in Thuringia has blown up.
Okay, in January 1930, Adolf Hitler personally negotiated Wilhelm Frick into Thuringia's cabinet as Minister of the Interior and Minister of Education, making the first time the Nazis had held ministerial power in a German state or were part of a governing coalition.
Soon, Frick, empowered by an enabling act, collided with the federal government by appointing Nazi-friendly police chiefs and introducing compulsory school prayers, many see as unconstitutional. Both led to direct confrontations with his federal counterparts, with the threat of sanctions by the federal government looming ever larger.
As a result, the German People's Party, the DVP, has grown nervous that Frick's heavy-handed moves unnecessarily risk a final showdown with the national government.
Then there's Gauleiter Fritz Sauckel and the Nazi Party's belligerence towards the DVP, painting them as one of the bourgeois traitor parties. Public insults directed at the DVP are the final nail in the coffin. Fearing Berlin's intervention and fed up with the insults, the DVP announces on March 13th that the coalition with the Nazis is dead.
The Kölnische Zeitung, affiliated with the DVP, releases an official statement. The National Socialists have broken the coalition by refusing to retract the insults directed at the Volkspartei. Because of this stance, together with everything that has preceded it, the Deutsche Volkspartei is released from its coalition commitment, and therefore no longer considers itself bound by any coalition agreements.
They also add, the experiment in Thuringia has failed. One will have to draw lessons from it.
The Nazis have this to say.
Sauckel explains that he never intended to insult the members of the Volkspartei in any way. Therefore, he has nothing to retract where they are concerned. He adds that the National Socialists remain willing to sit down at the interfactional negotiating table. Sauckel urgently warns against cooperating to form a minority government tolerated by the Social Democrats, arguing that such a move would surrender Thuringia's national development to left-wing arbitrariness.
A scenario that could become a reality, a minority government tolerated by the SPD, the Social Democrats. Already now, they have cooperated on one issue.
The Landtag disapproves of appointing the National Socialist race researcher Professor Dr. Günther to the University of Jena because there was no factual or scientific need for such an appointment, and setting up entirely superfluous professorships cannot be justified given the financial hardships of the state of Thuringia.
The Nazis comment,
none of the factions mentioned here is qualified to presume to pass judgment on such complex matters as the race question. But enough of what's going on in Germany this month. Let's see what's happening elsewhere. On to the Global Wire, bringing you news from around the world.
On March 26, representatives from 48 countries meet in Rome at an international wheat conference to tackle plunging grain prices amidst the global depression. The Soviet Union insists on exporting massive quantities of grain, despite growing rumors of famine, especially in Ukraine. Critics call it grain dumping, arguing that Moscow is undercutting prices abroad while Ukrainians struggle for food at home.
In the United States, they finally have an official national anthem.
Now.
Yeah, who knew the Americans went 150 years without one? On March 3rd, President Herbert Hoover signs the law making the Star-Spangled Banner the country's official anthem. Also in the States, just a few weeks later, on March 25th, 9 black teenagers, soon labeled the Scottsboro Boys, are arrested in Alabama on what seems to be trumped-up rape charges, igniting a nationwide debate over racial injustice.
In India, 3 anti-colonial activists, Bhagat Singh, Rajguru, and Sukhdev, are executed on March 23rd for their attack on British authorities. Many across the subcontinent mourned them as martyred heroes, fueling ever stronger calls for independence.
Then, from March 26th to 31st, the Indian National Congress meets in Karachi, demanding nothing short of complete independence from Britain. Whether this marks a tipping point for India's nationalist movement remains to be seen, but Britain certainly has no intention of letting go of its crown jewel just yet.
All told, it's a busy and fairly grim month around the globe. From shaky grain markets to racial strife in America and mounting unrest in British India, which is also connected to racial strife. Let's see where it all goes next month.
That wraps up our Global Wire coverage. Now let's check out our Weimar Wire political indicator, brought to you by Time Ghost.
With President Hindenburg's dictatorial emergency decree in place, and a truly desperate economic situation. Remember, over 5 million Germans are out of work, with only half receiving welfare. The country is primed for even more polarization. This is why the extremists, the communists and the Nazis, are both firmly on the upswing.
Meanwhile, the Social Democrats and the Bürgerblock, the ruling governing coalition under Chancellor Brüning's Catholic Conservative Centrum Party, are trending downward. Viewed by many as the establishment forces failing to solve Germany's crisis, will that perception change soon? With no election results this month to reveal the actual opinion of the German people, only time will tell.
And speaking of time, this month's coverage is over, and next month looks to be just as turbulent. Will Hindenburg's emergency decree actually restore order? Or is it Germany's first step towards dictatorship?
The collapse of the Nazi-led coalition. Is that a cautionary tale for the entire republic, or just a bump in the road for Hitler's ambition?
Then there's the customs union. Will Berlin press forward with Austria despite Allied outcry? Or could international pressure kill that plan before it is born?
And let's not forget, those 5 million unemployed, many with no welfare at all. Can Brüning's government offer real relief? Or is Germany's economic despair headed for a breaking point?
Well, maybe we'll find out together next time. And in the meantime, a massive thank you to the Time Ghost Army for making our coverage possible. If you want to be part of this mission, head over to timeghost.tv or patreon.com to join the fight. Weimar Wire signing off.
Excelsior!
Okay, something I wanted to point out. From July 1776 to it's March 1931. That's not 150 years. It's not even 155. It's 154 years and 8 months.
Oh, yeah.
So we shoot it all again. Shoot the whole thing again.
I think we've got to re-record.
But still, did you guys know that was you found that out, Sebastian? I had no idea that the U.S. didn't have an official.
Enough.
Okay.
Enough.
Okay.